Hello everyone and welcome to week 14. We are almost done with the semester. Can you believe it? So in today's video, we are going to review what you're going to need for your final exam, which is next week. So let's begin. First, let's look at what we have learned this semester. In Unit 1, we learned about movies and TV show vocabulary, present simple, present continuous, and adverbs of manner. In Unit 2, we learned weather and useful object vocabulary, the simple past tense, and also how to describe a famous historical person. In Unit 5, we learned household items and chores vocabulary. We learned how to use as, adjective as, and adjective enough, and got some practice describing a dream house. In Unit 7, we learned technology vocabulary, the present perfect tense, and how to make certain and uncertain predictions using will and won't, may and might. In Unit 8, we learned jobs, skills, and qualities vocabulary and conversation, present perfect for experiences, reflexive and indefinite pronouns, and a bit about job interviews. And in Unit 9, which we just finished last week, we learned music and dance vocabulary and how to self-study using TED Talks. So, wow, we have learned a lot this semester, haven't we? So, with all of this information, what are you going to use on your final exam? What is your final exam? And how can you prepare? You may be wondering, what is the final exam? So let's check it out. For your final exam, you are going to give a 1 to 2 minute presentation about a memorable experience. So for 1 to 2 minutes, you are going to talk about something you did in the past that you really liked or was really a wonderful experience for you, just something easy to remember, maybe an important memory for you. You are going to learn all about the final exam in the next video. In this video, we are going to review the helpful language that we have learned this semester that you could use and should use in your project. So, what language are we going to review? Let's review 5 main language points we have learned this semester. We're going to review present simple, present continuous, adverbs of manner, past simple, and the present perfect tense. After we review each grammar point, each language point, I'll show you some example sentences of how you might use these verb tenses to talk about your experience. So let's begin with present simple. Well, we all know present simple, don't we? So we're just going to do a quick review and see how we might use it when we're talking about a memorable experience. We use the simple present tense when we're talking about something that happens regularly or often, right? This is where we would use words like often, sometimes, rarely, never, and for things that are always true. So here we see how we can form the simple present tense. For regular verbs, we often can just keep them the same. Our simple present verbs don't change. I run, you go, we study. Remember that when we're using he, she, and it, our verbs do change, and we often add s, es, or ies. And again, we use simple present to talk about things that happen regularly and things that are always true. So here are a few examples. I run every day. She studies Spanish. Or we watch movies together, and we see we have our subject and our present simple verb. So let's go ahead and see some examples of how we might use present simple tense in our final project, in our final presentation. What kind of sentences could we use? Well, you will talk about an experience that you have had. So how can you use present simple? That's things happening regularly or things that are always true. So, what are some kinds of sentences we could use? Let's take a look at 3 sentence examples using present simple that we might use in our presentation. So here are our examples. I think about this experience often. I look at pictures from this trip all the time. I still tell stories about this fun experience with my friends. So here we see, how can we use present simple to talk about a past experience? Well, we can talk about how we still think about it or what we still do related to the experience. I think about this experience often. I look at pictures all the time. I still tell stories about it. Maybe a memorable experience, for example, could be something like playing an instrument on stage for the first time. And you can talk about your experience and then maybe say, oh, I still play the guitar today, right? It's true today. So there are many ways we can use present simple even when we are talking about the past. Next, let's talk about present continuous. So what's present continuous? Do you guys remember? Well, we can see the word continue, 계속되다. And here, continue means keep going. Continue, continue, continue. So present continuous is used to talk about things happening now. They are happening now and they'll probably continue to happen. So, for example, if I asked, what are you doing now? I am teaching. You are watching this video. We are using English. And what do we see? What can we notice when we look at these sentences? We have subject, the be verb, and then a verb plus ing. So let's look again. I am teaching. You are watching. We are using English. So present continuous we use to talk about now. So here we are again talking about now, but the final is to talk about the past. So how can we use this verb form to talk about an experience? Well, subject plus be plus verb ing is very useful for talking about our experiences. And if we want to talk about a past experience, we can change the be verb to the past tense. So instead of I am teaching, it would be I was teaching. Instead of I am studying, it would be I was studying, and so on. This is very useful for talking about past experiences and what we were doing during that time. So let's take a look at 3 sentence examples of how we could use subject and past tense and verb ing to talk about our memorable experiences. Here are our 3 examples. Example number 1. I was traveling in Vietnam when I had the best sandwich ever, the banh mi. Oh, I love banh mi. And here we can see we can use this to introduce what our experience was. What were we doing when we had that memorable experience? I was traveling in Vietnam when I ate the best sandwich I've ever had, banh mi. Let's look at another example. I was hiking on Halasan with my two best friends when we saw the most beautiful view. So here again, I'm using this continuous tense to talk about what I was doing when something happened that was memorable. The view was so beautiful. I was hiking when we saw the view. Let's take a look at one more. We were standing in line at the concert when we met the lead singer. Oh, that would be a great experience, wouldn't it? If you got to meet your favorite singer or a singer from a famous band. So here again, we see we were doing something when a memorable thing happened. We were standing in line when we met the lead singer. So you can see how this is very, very useful for talking about things we have done or things we were doing in the past. Okay, next, let's move on to talking about adverbs of manner. Adverbs of manner is from all the way back in Unit 1, but adverbs of manner are very good to use in everyday conversation to help you explain things a little bit more. We would call adverbs of manner descriptive language. This means that they add more detail and help the person you're talking to really understand your story and what you felt like, what you saw. So let's review adverbs of manner. Well, first let's answer the question, what is an adverb? What on earth is an adverb? An adverb is busa. They are words that change the meaning of adjectives and other verbs. So let's take a look and review these examples. So here are some sentences that have no adverbs, just subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, be, verb. I run, you sing, he's talking. Okay, so these are good sentences and they do tell us what is happening, but we could add more detail and make them even better and more descriptive. So let's look at some these same sentences with an adverb and see just how different they become. I run quickly. So here this changes the meaning of our verb run from something we think of at a normal pace to very fast. I run quickly. You sing beautifully. Now we can use this adverb to describe the singing. What was the singing like? You sing beautifully. And finally, he's talking. He's talking quietly. You can see again that this really changes the meaning of the sentence by adding some more description. When you are talking about your memorable experience, I want to hear all of the great details about your experience. And adverbs of manner are a great way to do that. So, adverbs of manner tell us how something happens, and they're usually after the verb or after the object. So in the previous slide, we saw all of them were after the verb. I run quickly. You sing beautifully. He's talking quietly. So they come after the verb. And this is usually the case. For example, he swims well. He ran quickly. She spoke softly. James coughed loudly to get her attention. So in all of these examples, we see we have our verb, and then after that is where we have our adverb, our busa. So what about this sentence? He plays the flute beautifully. We would not say he plays beautifully the flute. Why? Plays the flute is something called a clause. So it all belongs together. And we would want to keep the meaning of this sentence together. He does something beautifully. So plays the flute even though it's 3 words, kind of acts like one verb, one action. He does this beautifully. He plays the flute beautifully. He cooks bibimbap well, right? So if we have an action, we want to put the whole action before the adverb. So what are some ways we can use these excellent and helpful words to describe our experience? Again, let's look at 3 examples. She sang so beautifully that I almost cried. This is a very descriptive sentence that shows a lot of emotion, right? So here our adverb beautifully really shows why. Why did I almost cry? I wouldn't say she sang and I almost cried. Well, maybe she was really bad at singing and so I thought, oh, it's so terrible. But here we're specifying she sang so beautifully that I almost cried. It was so good. I had to run very quickly to catch my plane. So here, this adverb, quickly, shows that, oh, I'm running late and I had to go so fast to catch my plane. And this adds detail to our story. I don't need to explain I was running late, I can just say I had to run very quickly to catch my plane. And this descriptive adverb tells us so much about that experience and that situation. And last, here we're using to. The fireworks exploded loudly and spectacularly. So I could just say, I saw fireworks. But that's kind of a boring sentence, isn't it? That doesn't tell you what it was like or how I felt during that experience. If I say they exploded loudly and spectacularly, well, you can imagine it a little better and it gives more feeling to my story. So remember, adverbs of manner are excellent for adding detail, emotion, and feeling to your story. Next, let's talk about past simple. This is one you probably thought of first when you thought, past experience, past tense, of course. We can use the simple past tense to talk about something that happened once or several times in the past, or something that was true for some time in the past. For example, if I ask, what did you do yesterday? I taught students, I watched a YouTube video, and I talked to my friends. So in this verb tense, we usually have subject plus our verb and ed. We can just add ed to most verbs. But there are a lot of irregular or not normal verbs in English, like taught. Teach becomes taught, not teached, right? And here we can see all together, I taught students, no ed, irregular verb. I watched, I talked. So, as I said, the past tense is usually made by just adding ed, but there are a lot of irregular, not normal verbs in English. So here is a list of some of the most common and easily confused irregular verbs. Some that are especially tricky, it would be a word like choose, which would become chose. Come, came, drive, and drove. And sometimes we have those wonderful words that just don't change at all, like cut and cut. Or let's add the word read. This is a great one too. Today I read. Yesterday I read. So same spelling, but different pronunciation. So make sure to pay attention to irregular verbs as well when you're using the past tense. Let's look at some sentence examples about the 3 different ways we can use past simple. So first we see we can use past simple, of course, to talk about something that happened one time in the past. For example, I met my husband in 2005. we went to Vietnam for our holidays, or they watched a movie last night. We can also use past simple to talk about things that happened many times in the past. For example, when I was a boy, I walked a mile to school every day. We swam a lot while we were on holidays, and they always enjoyed visiting their friends. So these are things that happened often. And this is a great way to talk about our past experiences, right? Each of these could be made into a whole presentation about a memorable experience. And last, we can use past simple for something that was true for some time in the past. For example, I lived abroad for 10 years, or he enjoyed being a student. Some true fact about the past. So how can we use past simple for our memorable experiences? Well, of course, we have our subject and our past tense verb. So again, let's look at 3 examples. I moved to Masan to study at Gyeongnam University. Maybe that was a memorable experience for you when you started university. I met my favorite actor. Oh, that would be a very memorable experience, right? I went to Shanghai in 2018. So these are all memorable experiences, and of course, because they happened in the past, we can use past simple. Last, let's review the present perfect tense. Present perfect is used, of course, we know by now, using subject, have, and a past participle. So, for example, I have changed, or she has read the book. We can use the present perfect for something that started in the past and continues in the present. I have lived in Korea for 7 years. This started in the past and continues today. We can use it for something that happened in the past but is important now. I can't study because I have lost my book. And we can also use it when we're talking about our experience up till the present. I've seen that film before. So, again, we might be wondering, how can we use the present perfect tense to talk about our experiences? Well, before we look at that, let's take a look at our sentence examples. I have studied at university. You have worked for 5 years. I have managed 10 people, and so on. So we can use present perfect to add relevant or important information to our presentation, talking about our experience. Maybe if I'm telling a story about studying at university, oh, I have studied at university for 5 years, and this happened in my first year. So maybe it can give us some background information. And of course, remember, we can always add not or never to make our sentence negative. Let's look at some great sentence examples for how we might use present perfect to talk about our experiences. So, of course, we have subject, have or has, and our past participle. Here we're just going to be using I have, I have, I have. And let's look at some examples. I have been to Spain 5 times, but when I went the first time, something interesting happened. So here, giving some background information. I have been there many times, but the first time was a memorable experience. Something happened. I have studied English for 10 years, but I didn't get to use it much until I traveled to Australia. And then maybe we tell our story about going to Australia. So again, we see some background information. I have studied English for 10 years. And finally, I have wanted to travel to Italy for my whole life, and I finally went last year. So again, some background information. So we can use present perfect to share a little, maybe set up our story and talk about why we went or why what we're saying is important or memorable. Okay, everyone, that's it for our final review. In the next video, you're going to hear a detailed explanation of the final and also see an example of what you should do and what you're expected to do for your final exam. So if you have any questions, please send me a message on eClass, and I will see you guys soon. Okay? Bye-bye.